The release of Bubble Bobble for the Sega Master System manages to convey everything that made the arcade experience so memorable. Taking control of the twin bubble dragons Bub and Bob, it's your job to progress through a generous amount of stages on a quest to bring justice to the evil Baron who has incidentally kidnapped the brothers' girlfriends. Essentially a platformer, Bubble Bobble sees you jumping across platforms and trapping enemies within bubbles. In order to progress through each level, the player must take out each threat on the screen, with each enemy dropping food items along the way, serving as a means to gain points that contribute to an overall high score. Something that stands out once completing the game is the inclusion of multiple endings that depend on each player's overall performance throughout the adventure and the discovery of the many secrets that litter the game, such as a hidden message during the ending that hints to completing the adventure with a friend, taking advantage of the multiplayer option to reveal the true fate of Bub and Bob. Sega's first pop at offering a similar experience to Nintendo's Super Mario Bros. Saw the player taking control of Alex. The adventure is set across a total of 17 stages, and the action takes place from a 2D perspective that presents the player with varying environments and enemies that must be overcome in order to advance. Alex possesses the means to destroy enemies and break objects that obstruct the path forward, as well as an ability to utilize various vehicles, such as helicopters and motorbikes, that can be redeemed once collecting enough of the in-game currency scattered throughout each level. This adds a surprising amount of diversity to the gameplay, so if you're a fan of the genre, Alex Kidd in Miracle World offers one of the finest experiences available on the Sega Master System, and for this alone, it deserves a place in your library. Originally released in the arcades, R-Type came to the Master System with all the bells and whistles of the original and a full-on port that quickly became one of the most critically acclaimed games for the system. The player takes control of a ship that at the start of each level is equipped with a standard projectile weapon as well as a more competent weapon known as the Wave Cannon. Throughout the experience, it is possible to acquire an item known as the Force, which rewards the player with even more options to take out enemies, as well as defensive qualities such as shields, which help the player traverse each level. It really comes in handy when taking on the bosses that occupy each environment. With most of them taking up half of the screen, it is not only a visual treat, but also a challenging experience that requires patience and a knowledge of their actions. Failure is quite common within the game, but it does nothing but push you forward in the pursuit of bettering yourself and your level of skill. There's many different shoot 'em ups on the system, but in our opinion, R-Type offers up the best of the bunch. Ninja Gaiden introduces us to a side-scrolling action platformer that sees the player taking up the fight as a ninja known as Ryu. The narrative revolves around a massacre that took place within Ryu's home village and the subsequent search to bring those responsible to justice. It shares many similarities with the same series on the NES. The gameplay involves traversing each level whilst utilising a host of abilities, such as basic jumps and attacks, as well as special ninja expertise such as fireballs and projectiles, which even odds against the several enemies the game forces you to overcome. A clear level of passion was put into each boss battle as well, which all require specific strategies in order to overcome, and in all honesty soon becomes the standout aspect of the experience. Ninja Gaiden will keep you busy through its sizable adventure, and although it's not as difficult as previous entries in the franchise, it still possesses enough challenge for those that are looking for it. Master of Darkness shares many similarities with the likes of Castlevania. The gameplay, enemies and environments will feel instantly familiar to anyone who has experienced Castlevania, but do not do yourself a disservice and believe that Master of Darkness is a mere rip-off. As the player, you take up the role of Dr. Social, a psychologist who possesses a huge interest in the occult, which facilitates his communication with beings known as the Guardian Spirits. At the beginning of the game, you are armed with a knife to take on enemies, but throughout the course of the adventure, you will acquire a wide array of weaponry from axes to wooden sticks, each possessing their own distinct pros and cons that adds an extra layer to the otherwise predictable gameplay. As mentioned, if you're a fan of Castlevania, you'll feel right at home with Master of Darkness. So if you're looking for a side-scrolling adventure to jump into, Master of Darkness has got it all. Another arcade classic ported to the Master System, Space Harrier is a shoot-'em-up that subverts the standard tropes of the genre and instead presents the action flying towards you in a forward-scrolling manner. Created by the legendary Yu Suzuki, the player is plunged into the shoes of our main character known as the Harrier, and you are tasked with blasting anything that moves out of the sky as you make your way through a wide range of levels that all possess their own diverse attributes such as location and enemy types. Sharing many similarities with the likes of Afterburner, the gameplay takes a simple approach with the controls both feeling fluid and responsive, serving the on-screen action well and opening the experience to players of all ages. Now the fact that this game is even running on the system is a real testament to the team behind it, and although things do slightly lack in the visual department, especially when compared to its arcade counterpart, it's still a competent experience, resulting in what has to be some of Sega's finest work. Ys the Vanished Omen sees the player filling the shoes of a man known as Adol, who is tasked with overcoming a great evil that is engulfing the land. The action takes place from a top-down perspective, set across 2 towns and several dungeons that will see you exploring the land and encountering many different kinds of enemies and challenges along the way. Now what makes the game unique has to be its entirely different take on battles, which at the time was a huge deviation from the usual turn-based formula that many had become accustomed to. There is literally no attack button, with damage instead being dealt by simply running into enemies. It really helps it stand out, and does not at all become a tedious task within the world. As you would expect due to the nature of the genre, the game relies upon many of the RPG tropes, such as a focus on leveling up through the acquisition of experience points that to be honest can get quite grindy at points, but in no way deters from everything the experience gets right overall. If you're looking for a competent RPG on the system, Ys the Vanished Omens has got you covered. Wonder Boy 3 has to be one of the most underappreciated platformers of its era, clearly overshadowed by the likes of Mario on the NES. The incredible mix of platforming, puzzles and fighting. Right from the get-go, you know you're in for a treat, with the game opening with a daring escape sequence that plunges you straight into a boss fight. The outcome sees Wonder Boy transformed, with all of his abilities taken. This is where the game really begins, and tasks the player with exploring the land to ultimately try and find a way to lift the curse and become himself again. Progression is handled very nicely. Through the game you are rewarded with hearts, as well as several abilities, such as being able to transform into a variety of animal hybrids that all possess their own special expertise that become essential to making your way through the adventure. But that's not all. Wonder Boy 3 even includes an economy system that allows you to purchase new armor, weapons and abilities, and does nothing but add to what is one of the finest games on the system. Sega's flagship RPG series started out life on the Master System and introduced players to a world full of imagination and intrigue. It sees you taking control of a lady known as Alice, who is intent on stopping an evil ruler conquering her star system. Alice travels to and from a diverse set of planets to gather allies and essential items that will aid her in her quest to ultimately bring an end to the threat. Phantasy Star is a true JRPG in every sense of the word. You'll find yourself grinding out to gain experience to further enhance your character's abilities and effectiveness, exploring towns and encountering a wide array of interesting NPCs as well as enemy types. But what really stands out is the battling system. It manages to serve the action well, and with it being turn-based in nature, it also adds an extra layer of strategy to the proceedings. Overall, if you're looking for an RPG experience on the Master System, any fan of the genre will instantly feel right at home with Phantasy Star. Released in 1992 for both the Sega Master System and the handheld Game Gear, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 manages to bring the incredible platforming experience to the 8-bit system in style. It's a huge leap upon the first title in the series that also saw a port to the system. In terms of visuals, everything appears vibrant and stays in line with the original style of the series, and Sonic has never looked better when compared to his previous outings on the Master System. It really hammers home the quality of the experience. Gameplay-wise, the main aspects of the franchise appear intact. Sonic is both agile and easy to control, resulting in one of the finest platformers on the system. The experience is comprised of 7 zones, which all consist of 3 levels, resulting in a wealth of content for the player, and with 2 separate endings to the main journey, also a slice of replayability for those that wish to see everything that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 has to offer.